Whether you are new to Angular or new to Angular 2, you want to come up to speed quickly with Angular 2's components, templates, and services. Welcome to Angular 2 Getting Started from Pluralsight. My name is Deborah Kurata, and this course provides the basics you need to get started building an Angular 2 application. As we journey through this course, we'll discover Angular's many features and uncover the answers to key questions. For example, what is a component? Where do we put the HTML for our user interface? When should we use data binding? Why do we need a service? And how? How do we build an Angular 2 application? The who, of course, is you. This course guides you down the right path, making your own journey with Angular 2 more pleasant and productive. As we start this journey, let's get the lay of the land and take a high-level look at Angular. Simply stated, Angular is a JavaScript framework for building client-side applications using HTML, CSS, and a programming language, such as JavaScript. Why Angular and not some other JavaScript framework? And there are lots of JavaScript frameworks out there. Angular makes our HTML more expressive. It powers up our HTML with features such as if conditions, for loops, and local variables. Angular has powerful data binding. We can easily display fields from our data model, track changes, and process updates from the user. Angular promotes modularity by design. Our applications become a set of building blocks, making it easier to create and reuse content. And Angular has built-in support for communication with a back-end service. This makes it easy for our web applications to integrate with a back-end service, to get and post data, or execute server-side business logic. No wonder Angular is so very popular with millions of web developers. With so many developers already using Angular 1, why do we need an Angular 2? Angular 2 is built for speed. It has faster initial loads, faster change detection, and improved rendering times. Angular 2 is modern. It takes advantage of features provided in the latest JavaScript standards and beyond, such as classes, modules, and decorators. Yet it supports both greenfield and legacy browsers. Edge, Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. Angular 2 has a simplified API. It has fewer built-in directives to learn, simpler binding, and a lower overall concept count. And Angular 2 enhances our productivity to improve our day-to-day workflow. You'll see these productivity improvements as we go through this course, and we'll discern a consistency of patterns for building the blocks that form an Angular application. In this first module, we lay out the anatomy of an Angular 2 application. We consider several suggestions for getting the most from this course. We explore the sample application that we'll build throughout this course, and we'll look at the topics we'll cover in the remainder of this course. Okay then, let's check out the anatomy of an Angular 2 application. In Angular 2, an application is comprised of a set of components and some services that provide functionality across those components. So the next obvious question is, what is an Angular 2 component? Each component is comprised of a template, which is the HTML for the user interface fragment defining a view for the application. Add to that a class for the code associated with the view. The class contains the properties or data elements available for use in the view, and methods which perform actions for the view, such as responding to a button click. A component also has metadata, which provides additional information about the component to Angular. It is this metadata that identifies the class as an Angular component. So a component is a view, defined with a template, its associated code, defined with a class, and additional information, defined with metadata. We'll look at this in more detail in the upcoming modules. As we build these components, how do we pull them together into an application? We define Angular modules. Angular modules help us organize our application into cohesive blocks of functionality. Every Angular application has at least one Angular module called the application's root Angular module. An application can have any number of additional Angular modules, including feature modules that consolidate the components for a specific application feature. We'll see much more about Angular modules along our journey. For now, let's look at some tips for getting the most from this course. First are the prerequisites. This is a beginner-level course, but this course assumes you have some basic knowledge of JavaScript for code, HTML for building the user interface, and cascading style sheets or CSS for styling. You don't have to have much experience, but a working knowledge of each will help you get the most from this course. Though not required, it is helpful if you have had some exposure to object-oriented programming concepts, maybe through coding with C++, C#, Java, or PHP. But if you don't have any exposure to OOP, that's okay. You do not need any prior knowledge of Angular, Angular 2, or TypeScript. We'll cover what you need in this course. Another way to get the most from this course is to join the discussion. Thoughts, comments, or questions as you watch this course? Feel free to use the discussion tab. You can find the link to the discussion on the Pluralsight page for this course. Or follow me on Twitter. It would be great to hear about your experiences with Angular 2. There is also a blog post specifically for this course at the URL shown here. This post lists common issues along with their solutions. If you are having problems with the code for the course, check here first. There may already be a solution posted. Keep this URL handy as you work through the course. When building web applications, regardless of the technologies we use, there are often lots of steps and places where things can go wrong. That's where a good checklist can come in. I'll present checklists at the end of each module, and we'll use them as a brief review of what was covered in that module. Feel free to jump ahead to the checklist if you have any problems when coding along with the demos in the module, and consider referencing these checklists as you start building your own Angular 2 applications. Coding along on this journey is another great way to get the most from this course. Though not required, it is often helpful to try out the presented code as you navigate through the course. To get you started, I've set up a public GitHub repository specifically for this course. It is called Angular 2 Getting Started, and you can find it at this URL. The starter files for the sample application are here. You can use these files as a starting point if you want to code along with the demos. If you'd prefer to follow along with the completed code, you can find that here. If you're new to GitHub, simply click this button to download all of this code as a zip file. So what is this sample application? Let's take a look. To demonstrate the basic features of Angular 2, we'll build a simple application step by step as we journey through this course. Let's see the finished sample application in action. Welcome to Acme Product Management. As its name implies, this application manages our current list of products. Here at the top is our menu for access to the key features of the application. In a full-featured application, there would of course be more options here, but we want to limit this sample application to the features we can build within this course. Clicking on the Product List option displays the Product List page. We see the page title and a table containing the list of products. If the user clicks the Show Image button, the product images appear and the button changes to Hide Image. Click the button again to hide the images and compress the display. Notice the nice formatting of our price. And instead of a number for the rating, we display the rating in stars. Here at the top is an input box where the user can enter a filter string. When the input box contains a value, a filtered by message appears, and the product list is filtered to only those with a product name that contain the entered string. Click on a product name to navigate to the product details. On the product detail page, we see the page title with the name of the product and all of the product details, including a product description, the nicely formatted price, and the star rating. Click the Back button to navigate back to the product list page. So not a huge app, but big enough to demonstrate the basics of Angular 2. As with any Angular 2 application, this application is comprised of a set of components, including a nested component for the rating stars. It has a service to get the data, and it incorporates routing to navigate between the pages. Now that we've seen the sample application, how do we build it? As stated earlier, an Angular 2 application is comprised of a set of components and services that provide data and logic across those components. With that in mind, let's break the sample application into components and services. For the Welcome page, we'll build a Welcome component. For the Product List page, we'll build a Product List component. Recall that we had a nice visual display of stars for our ratings. We want to reuse that feature, so we'll build a separate, nestable star component. Clicking on a product in the product list page displayed the product detail. We'll build a component for that as well, and reuse the star component. Then we need an app component that ties our application pieces together. And our application gets data, so we'll want a product data service. Lastly, we need the obligatory index.html file. We'll build the basics of each of these pieces and learn how to organize them into Angular modules as we journey through this course. We start with first things first. We'll select a language and editor to use, then walk through how to set up an Angular 2 application. Next, we'll dive into components. We'll build the app component using a simple template and minimal component code and metadata. We'll see how to build the user interface for our application using templates, interpolation, and directives. We'll power up that user interface with data binding and nicely format our data with pipes. Next, we'll tackle some additional component techniques. We'll define interfaces, encapsulate styles, and leverage lifecycle hooks to build better components. We'll see how to build a component designed to be nested within other components, and how to communicate between the nested component and its container. We often have logic or data that is needed across components. We'll learn how to build services specifically for this purpose, and use dependency injection to inject those services into the components that need them. Most web applications need to communicate with a backend server to get or post data and to execute backend business logic. In this module, we'll leverage HTTP to retrieve the data for our application. Our sample application displays multiple views. We'll see how to set up routing to navigate between those views. Next is Angular modules. We learn about and use the root Angular module throughout this course. But as the application grows, we want to separate its concerns. This course module reviews the basics of Angular modules and refactors our application into logical blocks using multiple Angular modules. We're covering a lot of territory, and by the end of our journey, we'll have a simple but fully operational Angular 2 application. You can use that application as a reference for your own development. Let's start our journey through Angular 2.